Time. Units of the Ministry of Defense and the Internal Affairs of Russia today have approached Grozny from the westerly and easterly directions, taking under control the town of Hankala and the airport adjacent to it and the village Oktyabrskaya in the suburb of the Chechen capital. At 1600 hours, this was announced at the meeting of the operational headquarters under the government of Russia, which was chaired by the first Vice Premier Oleg Saskovets. During the operation, unlawful militarized formations have lost 2 tanks, 2 combat vehicles, and 1 artillery installation. Border troops have established reliable control at the border with Russia in seaports and airports. The commandos were less active than usual. 2 possible reasons are cited for this: the positive effect of the address of the President, Boris Yeltsin, and the decisive actions of the Russian forces. According to military intelligence, Dudaev commandos have begun to experience an ammunition deficit. During the night hours, Grozny and its suburbs were not bombed or subjected to missile attacks. 2 Russian military personnel were slightly injured. Moscow has accused the armed Dudaev formations of firing in the morning from 2 artillery hail repeat fire installations at the populated area Urus-Martan, which previously had been cleared of the gunmen. In Grozny, the prices on weapons have fallen sharply. A growing number of insurrectionists from villages are opting to abstain from combat. The Kalashnikov automatic rifle today costs $250. The retired general Jahar Dudaev seems to be losing his self-confidence. If yesterday he had promised himself to fly a bomber plane and bomb the capital of Russia, today, in another interview, the Dudaev, the former communist who currently is a true believer, threatened to execute prisoners under the state of war law. The 24-year-old son of Dudaev, Ayur, was seriously injured in combat near Argun. As Interfax learned from well-informed sources within the Kremlin, on Tuesday, Boris Yeltsin met with Viktor Chernomyrdin. The basic topic of the conversation was regularizing the situation in Chechnya. Specifically, they discussed concrete questions of organizing food and other forms of aid to regions freed from Dudaev gunmen. The President and the Prime Minister summarized the departing year and discussed elements of economic strategy for 1995. They also touched on several personnel questions with the perspective of possible changes within the government. As Interfax reports, Ivan Rybkin stated that he supports President Boris Yeltsin in the action against the criminal armed groups in Chechnya. He noted that for him personally, it would be preferable that methods be used by the Americans in the Desert Storm in the Persian Gulf. Ivan Rybkin clarified that he meant launching precise blows on ammunition stockpiles and commandos with preliminary warnings of the planned blows a few hours in advance. Today, the presidents of Kazakhstan and Russia had a telephone conversation. This, a correspondent of Vitartas learned from well-informed sources. Special attention in that conversation was devoted to the situation in Chechnya. Boris Yeltsin informed Nursultan Nazarbayev about the development events in that republic and measures undertaken by the federal government to resolve the crisis. The president of Kazakhstan expressed concern for the situation in Chechnya, and leaning on public opinion and the large Chechen diaspora in his republic, conveyed to the head of the Russian state his wishes for success in finding ways to terminate further bloodshed on the land of the Russian Federation. An agreement was reached on the Kazakhstan-Russian summit in the beginning of next year. In certain parts of Grozny, Russian troops already have crossed the city limits. However, there is no mention of storming the Chechen capital, but clearing it from unlawful militarized groups. This was stated today at a press conference in Moscow by the Secretary of the Security Council of Russia, Oleg Lobov. The operation to disarm unlawful militarized groups in Chechnya will continue to be executed in a constitutional manner and will be completed in a very brief time frame. So journalists were assured by the Secretary of the Security Council, Oleg Lobov. As of today, in blockaded Grozny, there's an estimated 15,000 commandos. However, the mission to disarm them is complicated by the presence in the city of from 700 to 200,000 peaceful residents. For the sake of saving them, the city will no longer be bombed. If military operations are planned to annihilate heavy technology or military objects within the city, these operations must be carefully planned in order to protect the peaceful population. The city Grozny will be freed from all unlawful formations, mercenaries, and criminals. It will be freed. Not taken by storm, but freed. Oleg Lobov doesn't exclude the possibility of continuing talks, but according to him, it's not clear with whom to hold these talks, because only part of the armed formations are in subordination to Dudaev, the rest have their own field commanders. The Secretary of the Security Council touched also on the mechanism for normalizing life in Chechnya after completing the disarmament operation. According to him, the temporary administration, headed by the Vice Premier Nikolai Yegorov, forming local organs of rule, will undertake restoration of decimated industrial objects and prepare for elections in Chechnya. We just received a report from our colleagues from the studio NTV. Forces of the Mozdok unit of the Russian army, under the command of the Major General Konstantin Poliakovsky, having saddled the Tursk Ridge, have occupied combat positions on the fringes of Grozny. Dudaev propaganda made quite an effort to represent the Russian soldier in the eyes of the locals in the image of a bloodthirsty and merciless occupier. Therefore, the population views the troops with caution. War is war, and we're probably fulfilling our duty here. We were sent here to protect the peaceful residents, and I think we're managing to do this for now. Russian forces are using the force of weapons only as the very last argument, preferring dialogue to force. At the Green Point, Sadovaya, 5 kilometers from Grozny, General Poliakovsky managed to establish dialogue with representatives of local rule and residents of the village. No one intends to kill anyone, pillage, or anything else. We're following the orders of the president, and he was driven to it. You've probably heard about that. And I repeat again, we are the regular army. We were trained to conduct combat activities, and we're not intending to perform any searches or raids or inspections. For this, you have your own forces. You are the elected authorities here, and you have your own organs, so create order yourselves. As a result of dialogues, relocation of troops was possible without clashes, without losses among Russian forces and casualties among the local residents. Even if Chechen money, in truth, is being used to sustain several sources of mass media, a statement regarding this must have a concrete object so as not to cast a shadow over the entire community of journalists. The statement was made today to a correspondent of Tartas by the chairman of the Fund of Defense of Glasnost, the Union of Journalists of Russia, Alexei Simonov, because of accusations made by Russian leadership. Today, the Vice Premier, Sergei Shakrai, acquainted journalists with the objectives of the new Temporary Informational Analytical Commission under the government of Russia to regularize the crisis in Chechnya. Sergei Shakrai is the head of that commission, whose task is to track and analyze information on the situation in Chechnya, regions of the Northern Caucasus, and also study public opinion. The processed information will be used by the government. As noted by Sergei Shakrai, force and other ministries involved in the events in Chechnya must supply operational information to the Commission. The heads of the administrations have received the task of bringing information prepared within the Commission to the awareness of the public. The government mass media must give the official point of view of the Russian government on the situation in Chechnya. And at the same time, there is no ban on other sources of information for all sources of mass media. And we're not revoking the right of free professional commentary of any informational sources, and in no form is censorship imposed. Today at the press conference in the White House, the Deputy Director of the Federal Service of Counterintelligence, Valentin Sobolev, openly endorsed yesterday's address of the President of Russia. The FSK is in Chechnya, according to him, in accordance with the Constitution. Valentin Sobolev supported the opinion of the President of Russia that the Dudaev regime has destroyed the economy and criminalized society. If Dudaev is taken prisoner, said Valentin Sobolev, then the norms of the Criminal Code of Russia will apply to him. The peaceful population of Chechnya can be at peace. No repressions or evictions are planned, and they will not take place. Regarding yesterday's explosion of the bus in Moscow near the metro station Vidinha, according to the deputy director of the FSK, this could have been done only by a madman. In Moscow, prophylactic work is underway, and a large quantity of weapons and ammunition is being confiscated. However, the threat of terrorist acts, according to Sobolev, does exist. Dudaev is not a simple person. He has trained terrorists, gunmen, he has paid money, and he believes that someone will perform a terrorist act, but no one is for now. There is a restraining factor which influences them. The Federal Immigration Services have registered, as of today, 34,374 people as forced resettlers from Chechnya since the beginning of the military operation to restore lawfulness and order there. Probably none of these people could have even imagined that the traditional family holiday, New Year, will have to be greeted away from native lands, and the word refugees is previously known to Russians from reports from hot points of the globe, will become a harsh reality of their lives. Of course, one cannot say that the new land is hostile. It's relatively comfortable for hundreds of refugees from Chechnya. They have not become foreigners and are eternally grateful to the employees of the immigration services of the Astrakhan district who took on the complicated burden of temporary housing for them, and to those who decided to stay. More than 80 well-set-up apartments were allocated. The leader of the party of the Democratic Choice of Russia shared with journalists his impressions of yesterday's address of the president. In the opinion of Gaidar, the Russian side is not taking dialogues seriously as a means of resolving the Chechnya problem. Of course, I was glad to hear that the president gave an order to cease air and bomb attacks on the residential parts of Grozny. Gaidar stated that his party and the Russian Fund of Compassion and Health are beginning to organize deliveries of humanitarian aid to Chechnya, announcing his objection to the policy of the president regarding resolving the Chechen crisis. Yegor Gaidar yet feels it's unfeasible for a minister and a member of Russia's choice to secede from the government. The president's aides, Yuri Baturin, the national security aide, and Georgy Satarov on political issues, refuted rumors that they intend to resign in the near future. In an interview to correspondent Interfax, Baturin and Satarov called these rumors absolutely unfounded. Georgy Satarov added that probably certain political circles very much want at this moment to have ejected out of the president's team persons with certain political views. Today, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Andrei Kozyrev, gave an exclusive interview to our program. In it, there was discussion of the situation around Chechnya. We would be misunderstood if we didn't at least touch on this question, since this is a Russian republic and currently is a bleeding wound. Considering yesterday's address of our president and considering the concerns of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what can you say? Yesterday's address of the president seems to me precisely contains two thoughts. First, it's impermissible to allow the destruction of Russia or to perpetuate or keep the criminal hub, and so much force as is necessary will be applied in order to resolve this question by force. That's the first thought. But the second theme is also very strong. The door to a political solution, the door of dialogues, the president and the government are keeping open. And we'll say that it depends on the other side whether to enter the store or not. A detailed account of the interview of Andrei Kozyrev you can see today on our channel at 2150.